I want to now introduce our speaker. He has some really insightful ways of looking at some of the fundamental reasons that oftentimes entrepreneurs fail. And he's certainly capable of explaining what is really complex with a fairly observable model to really understand things. I think once you hear his presentation of that you'll go, aha. I believe you're going to walk away, have some real takeaways and ideas on how to make your organization perform better through his kind of methodology called method teaming. Without further ado, let me welcome our special guest, Marcus Harwood. Marcus.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This is going to be an audience participation talk, so I, by all means, would like your comments, your questions. The more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. But we want to talk about why do so many entrepreneurial organizations fail? And I don't understand all the reasons, but I understand one reason that I think is very, very prevalent in the entrepreneurial world. And that's what we're going to explore a little bit today. There we go. Here's a list. To get started, just give you a chance to get your mind working and your speech going. Here's a list of things. So tell me, what do these things have in common?
You have to make a decision on each one. You know, you can hem and haw and not be aware of all the parts of each detail.
You're getting warmer.
The things you have to do to launch.
Things you have to do to launch. You, the key word in that is you. So what am I looking for?
Individual decisions.
Individual decisions?
You need
People.
people.
You get the gold star. What's your name?
Melinda.
Melinda. She gets the gold star. These are all things that people do. And when we're starting businesses, particularly sort of high-tech entrepreneurial businesses, we lose sight of the fact that all of this is done by people. Certainly computers, good process, good methodology helps us, but this is all people stuff. If we tripled the list, everything would still be done by people. And yet if you look as entrepreneurs, where do we spend our time thinking about our business? You might be different, but we spend this much time thinking about our technology, this much time thinking about our process, and about that much time thinking about our people. To explore that notion, you and I need a common language, all right? We need a language to have the rest of our discussion this morning. So very quickly, I'm going to teach you the language that we have in our firm, O&D. These are the 4 words in the language, so don't worry about it. You'll be able to master this language to the extent we need you to do it for the purpose of this conversation. It's a simple language, only 4 words. And these are also the names of the 4 intellects that we identify in method teaming, which is the seminal product of our company. Now let me give you a very, very quick tour. And again, this is only so you and I can have a conversation this morning. I'm going to start with the PD intellect. So by the way, I don't think I mentioned it, everybody in this room has a primary intellect. Everybody in this room just about has an identifiable secondary intellect. So you get the idea on PDs? They're practical, they don't need a lot of pats on the back. That kind of people I'm talking about, PDs. Let's go next to networkers. The networkers are people who are naturally gifted at creating, sustaining, and nurturing relationships. They're gifted at that. That is as easy for a networker as is managing great complexity is for a PD. It's easy for them. They read people almost instantly. Almost instantly. They can read a situation. If you've ever studied communication, you'll know that 93% of communication is nonverbal, and the networkers are the masters of reading the nonverbal. So that's our EQs. And then finally, the strategists. The strategists are the intellect that can give us on-demand creativity on the dimension of thinking their creativity happens to be centered on, which could be one of 3. But they can give us on-demand creativity and ideation. Now, will all the ideas be good? No. Some ideas will be very good, some ideas will be very bad, and they don't even care if you think some of their ideas are bad, as long as you think occasionally they've got a good one. Now, let's talk about you, the entrepreneur. By definition, you've got one primary intellect covered. That's it. Everybody only has one primary intellect. So one configuration we might have is you might be sitting in the audience and be one of our entrepreneurs, and you're a PD. Now, I'm going to give you one scenario. Maybe I'd like some of you to think about adding maybe one to my example. How does a PD become an entrepreneur? Well, it's pretty simple. The PDs very frequently are going to follow the data. They love data. And if they follow the stream of data that they're very confident in, eventually it might lead to a point outside the box, something nobody else has done before. And they're very confident that that data point is correct. So therefore, there's not a lot of risk in doing what they want to do. EQs make great salespeople, networkers, particularly if they're what we call alpha, meaning they're very dominant networkers. They make superb account managers. For your company to be successful, you're eventually going to have both. And I'm actually going to tell you a little story about how you're not likely to get that right here in a moment. Let's go back to the PD. First of all, any questions at this point? Yes, sir.
You've got 2 words and then 2 abbreviations. What do EQ and PD mean in your...
Good question. That stems from the predecessor methodology of this that we developed early in my tenure with Ernst & Young. And PD is what we call somebody who could accomplish big complex projects. We call them project directors. That's where PD came from. That was Big Six speak at the time. And the other one, EQ, we had a sales process that we happened to be using in those days where the initial stages of the sales process were externally find and qualified deals, EQ. Here's the catch. Every psychometric instrument available on the market today is valid. It measures what it says it measures. But that fact that that instrument is valid, I would still tell you if you try to make a determination of intellect from any one instrument, it's extremely dangerous. You're going to be wrong about 20% of the time. If you're a PD and you needed to hire the EQ and you end up with another PD, you're pretty much dead. That's it. Game over. So you got to use science, and our point to you, sir, is you got to use multiple instruments to get it right. Okay? We'll show you why. I have an example. I'll show you why that's so important here in a moment. Now, do we PDs, if we're PDs, do we much like the EQs? No. So as we hire them, we're going to say, well, hold my nose, but I need to hire you. You bet. I think you're probably right. Is the PD says, I got a great product. I've designed the heck out of it. It's wonderful. Now I need somebody who can help me sell it. I need revenue. So I think you're exactly right. So that's right. EQ, you did a good job. Now, what are the chances? Just what would you think? What do you think the chances are that this PD has ever hired a salesperson in their life? And they're an entrepreneur, right? Pretty good chance, never. And let me tell you, there are people who run sales organizations who've hired nothing but salespeople their whole lives, and they get it wrong sometimes without science to help them, right? So what are the chances are that the PD goes out and tries to find the EQ? What do you think they're probably going to end up with? Excuse me? What? Does anybody else have another idea? Another PD, exactly. So how do you get it right? You use science. I'm going to give you a few tips on this. This happens to be the science that my firm has, that we use. And you don't have to use our science. You can use somebody else's science. But the one thing, and I was making the point earlier to the gentleman over here from the MBA program, right? The point that I would make to you is do not try to figure out somebody's intellect looking at one instrument. And this is a sample I've got. This is a real person. This sample that I've got for you is a great example of why you don't want to do that. We're not going to teach you everything there is to know about this person, but we do want to point up to that cognitive structure instrument. So what we measure are behavior patterns, we look at motivators, and we look at how she channels her intelligence. Not how intelligent she is, but how her mind channels the intelligence she has. Well, I would just say thank you very, very much for being here and being so attentive and asking such phenomenally great questions, really insightful, sharp questions. Just a pleasure to speak to you today.
Let me make a few concluding comments. Marcus, thank you for absolutely a thought-provoking presentation.